أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة.
A Muslim is one who submits. Submits, that is, to the will of God, Allah. For the religion which developed from the life and preaching of the Prophet Muhammad was called by him Islam, submission to God. Muhammad was a citizen of Mecca who appeared as a preacher of monotheism to his own people in Arabia in the year 610. And the revelation which appeared to him and which he transmitted to his people is called the Quran, the unique possession of the community of the faithful, and that which is considered to be the true and revealed Word of God. To be a Muslim, to be in submission to God and living in accordance with the teachings of the Prophet, one should obey the rule of law, the Sharia, which itself is based upon the Quran and upon a collection of traditions known as the Hadith, and this among other sources. With me today is my colleague, Professor Muhammad Umar Memon, a specialist in Islamic studies here in the Department of South Asian Studies of the University of Wisconsin. Before we begin our discussion of the distinctive features of Islam in South Asia, I thought we might develop some insights into Islam in general. For instance, I would like to know how it is that one becomes a Muslim.
Good question, David. To become a Muslim is very simple indeed. All one has to do is to go to a Muslim, just any Muslim, and pronounce before him the kalima, or the profession of faith, which runs as follows. Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Meaning, I bear testimony that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Now, this kalima, or profession of faith, is the first of the 5 pillars of Islam. There is no clergy in Islam, nor is there a period of formal apprenticeship. After having thus become aggregated to the community, Ummah, a central concept in Islam, certain duties devolve on the individual Muslim. Most of these duties have a very peculiar feature, and that is that they reinforce the idea of collective living. First of these duties, the second pillar of Islam, are the 5 daily prayers, ideally performed in a mosque with fellow believers, but one can also perform them at home alone. Second duty, the third pillar of Islam, is fasting for a whole month during the year. Muslim fast lasts from a little before dawn to the exact moment of sundown. During this period, no drinks or food is taken. Another duty is the payment of the poor tax or almsgiving, which, as a matter of fact, subsumes under it a whole philosophy of social responsibility.
Right.
Wealthy Muslims enjoy their wealth by the leave of God. In a year, they are therefore required to pay a certain percentage of tax on their holdings and material assets, which is to say that after having paid the tax, they have thus purified the remainder for their lawful use and also shared in the responsibility of caring for the needy and less fortunate Muslim brothers. And now we come to the last pillar of Islam, and this is the annual pilgrimage, the Hajj,
which culminates on a particular festival.
the Eid al-Adha, as we call it. Now, a Muslim, provided he has money lawfully acquired, must undertake pilgrimage to Mecca once during his lifetime. But of course, as an act of voluntary devotional act, I mean to say, he can return to the sacred city more often. The Hajj is a Muslim symbolic way of showing the continuity of the religious tradition initiated by the Prophet Abraham, when he, along with his son Ishmael, toiled in the blazing heat of the sun and built the first house of God, indeed the very first house of God, the Kaaba in Mecca. Kaaba simply means a cubical structure. There are several rites and ceremonies of Hajj, among them the circumambulation of the Kaaba and the rite of running between the two hills of Safa and Marwa in commemoration of the anguish which Hagar experienced as she ran between these two hills in search of water for her thirsty son Ishmael.
Right. Now, as is well known, there are two essential communities in Islam, the Sunni conservative majority and the smaller but influential Shia tradition. And after the death of Muhammad, the four so-called rightly guided caliphs concluded with Ali, who was murdered in 661. And his second son, Hussein, died in the Battle of Karbala. And it is the passion, the tradition of celebrating the passion of these two, Ali and Hussein, which really becomes the focus for the Shia tradition. And we're going to come back to that. Now, both of these communities, the Sunni and the Shia, are represented in South Asia as they are in the Muslim world in general. Now, one of the remarkable stories to me in the history of religions is the dynamism with which Islam expanded in the first generation after the Prophet, an expansion that thrust westward across North Africa, north into the Byzantine Empire, northeast into the Persian Empire, already reaching the northwestern part of India, the Sindh, within the first century after the Prophet. Then there were centuries of conversion, of slow conversion in the north, and in the early 11th century, there began the systematic plunderings of the cities of the north by forces of the Ghaznavid Empire, which extended all the way from Mesopotamia to the Ganges. There were also merchant communities established along the coasts, and by the time of the Sultanate of Delhi in the mid-13th century, political control of much of the north was in the hands of the Muslims. The Mughal Empire succeeded until by the death of the Emperor Akbar in 1605, most of the north was a single political administration. By the late 17th century, most of South India, the Deccan, had been annexed, and Muslim hegemony remained until the British Raj intruded in the late 18th century. Now, in the contemporary political division of South Asia, there are 4 countries with large Muslim populations, totaling well over 200 million Muslims. Almost the entire population of both Pakistan and Afghanistan, and 80% of the population of Bangladesh is Muslim. Only 11% of predominantly Hindu India is Muslim, but even that minority in so large a country is nearly the size of the population of Pakistan. We go now to a small mosque in a town in western India to observe the Friday noon prayers. The muezzin has given the call to prayer that we heard at the beginning of the program, and people are now obeying that call, coming into the mosque from the street and the shops that front the mosque. They enter and first perform their ablutions with water, washing themselves carefully before turning away to the courtyard that separates the ablution area from the mosque interior. This mosque, or masjid, is a typical one where large numbers of men come for Friday prayers, especially at the noon hour.
The best day on which the sun has risen is Friday. On it, Adam was created. On it, he was made to enter paradise. On it, he was expelled from it. So runs the saying of the Prophet Muhammad. Thus, Friday occupies a place all its own in the spiritual as well as the social life of the Muslim community, and may be likened in some ways to the Christian Mass on Sunday. But it is not a day of rest earmarked specifically for devotional acts of worship. Moments of rest, ease, devotion, and downright terrestrial business all go hand in hand in Islam, because Islam is not only a religion focusing on the spiritual life of a Muslim, but also a total way of life, embracing the entire range of human activity, from business transactions during the day to moments of intense personal voluntary devotion in the dead of night. But the chief importance of Friday lies in uniting in a specific location, the mosque, members of the Muslim community who may have lived a whole week in separation from one another. The Friday congregational prayer is observed at noon when the sun has just passed over the meridian. Muslims are encouraged to take a bath and perfume themselves before coming to their local mosque. A Muslim formal prayer is divided into the mandatory and the non-mandatory prayer units, the rak'ah. Non-mandatory units are usually those that the Prophet offered out of his own choosing and volition. Muslims may or may not offer these, but the mandatory ones they must, and here they are offering as a matter of fact. Here we see then Muslims offering non-mandatory prayers before the formal prayer. Soon the Imam will come, indeed he has come, and take his place on the pulpit.
Some 200 men have gathered here by this time, arriving in various groups or individually.
Yes, he will first give a sermon in Urdu, written freshly every week by him on certain contemporary problems, as he's doing here. Next, read some selections from certain prayer manuals in the Arabic language. Then, people will stand up to perform the formal prayer behind the Imam. Directly behind the Imam is the prayer niche, mihrab, and it is always oriented toward a particular direction called the Qibla.
We see here that all of the people in the mosque have been men. Now, you mentioned earlier that it is possible for one to perform devotions at home. Now, is it the case that women generally pray at home rather than in the mosque?
Generally, that is the case.
Yes, and we can see in another larger mosque where men have also come for Friday noon prayers, in the background behind a pillar, two women who are performing prayers.
Yeah, women are generally not permitted in mosques, but if they are, they normally take a secluded area. Now, the woman on the left has obviously finished her formal prayer and she is engaged in a personal prayer, and the one on the right is still in the prostration posture. She hasn't finished it.
The veiling and seclusion of women can be observed here in the women in this outdoor mosque, and that is a custom, of course, that is still widely prevalent in South Asia, although it is passing from the scene.
That's true.
Now, thus far, we've been discussing features that are common to Islam generally. Suppose we begin now to look at some of the distinctive features of Islam in South Asia.
Islam in South Asia also offers a number of peculiarities, which include the Sufi traditions, the influence and impact of the Hindu caste system upon Islam, distinctive architecture, and particular festival rites and ceremonies. As for Sufism, the word Sufi is derived from the Arabic word suf, meaning wool. Since the early Sufis and mystics of Islam were in the habit of wearing coarse woolen garments, they came to be known as the Sufis. A Sufi is a wayfarer along the mystical path with a single purpose in mind: the ultimate union of man with God, the attainment of that rare moment of bliss when the imperfect and the transient human realm is uplifted and absorbed into the rarefied realm of the divine, free of all blemish, of attributes of imperfection, ugliness, and transience. But worldly attractions distract him. He has therefore to tread the mystical path by degrees, a little at a time, shedding off one human attribute here, another there. These different stages and stations along the mystical path are called maqam, and the various inner states the Sufi experiences along this path are designated by the term hal. Diverse and many are the Sufi contemplative techniques. Some mystics, amid violent exertion of the body, dance out of the phenomenal world into transcendence, into the great void beyond, as is the wont of the whirling dervishes of Iran and Turkey. Others concentrate on the geometrical patterns, the highly subtle, equally intricate, arabesque decorative designs artfully woven into the architecture of mosques. Calligraphy, too, has the same effect in arresting the wavering attention and holding it in focus over long stretches of time on the mysteries of the one God of Islam, the timeless, resplendent divine beloved of the Persian Sufi poets, a beloved whose beauty defies all description, but has to be still, unfortunately, expressed through human attributes of language and imagination, however inexact they might be. Like ripples folding out in circular rhythmic motion over the surface of a pool, these intricate geometrical arabesques roll out in an unending sequence of glittering forms, alternately attracting and repelling the Sufi's attention, attracting to free him from his awareness of the phenomenal world, repelling to be lost into contemplation of the eternal beloved, the only reality in existence, the ground of all being. This loss of consciousness is designated by the Sufi term fana, and the subsequent persistence in the awareness of God by the term baqa. A famous concept in Sufism was introduced by the Mursian theosophist and mystic Ibn al-Arabi. And this concept was Wahdatul Wujud, ontological monism, to which an Indian Muslim, Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi, of early 17th century, proposed his contrasting concept, Wahdatul Shuhud, phenomenological monism. A Sufi has to travel the mystical path in the company of a master, the Sheikh. This master, Sheikh, is called Pir in India and Pakistan. There are mendicants, faqirs, and dervishes, like we see here. They may not be Sufis in the strict sense, but they do carry about them an otherworldly look and a quite spaced out expression. In India, Sufism spread very quickly, both among the unlettered Muslim and Hindu masses, because the Sufi god was blissfully free of considerations of caste and inaccessibility. He sat neither in the mosque nor in the temple, but everywhere, more prominently in the heart of his lover. The spread was the work of the Sufi brotherhoods, notable among them being the Chishti, and of course the other two major ones are the Sohrawardi and the Firdausi. While the language of the Mughal courts of the foreign cultural elite of the ruling house remained largely Persian, the Sufi since he had his business with the masses, spoke of feelings, sensations and ideas in a language they could understand. This was the Urdu language, which today, according to a rough estimate, is understood by about 100 million people in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Urdu is also the language of complex metaphysical and mystical ideas, of certain forms of poetry that are present almost universally in most Islamic literatures. For example, the ghazal, which, as it travels from Persia on down into India, reaches a certain synthesis as a result of the brisk interaction it had had with the local Indian tradition. Ghalib, in whom this synthesis reaches its most profound expression, is equally at home in Persian and Urdu. His is the ghazal of complex metaphysical ideas, of the effort to pursue the intangible, the abstract, the unreachable, and fail and smolder in anguish. Other products of this synthesis were the poets Mir and Badil.
Now, one finds in the religions of South Asia, and in Hinduism particularly, a strong distinction between urban and rural or village traditions. Now, would you say that this is as much true of Islam as it is of Hinduism in South Asia?
Certainly, this is one way of looking at it. Personally, I find the division between official, semi-official, and popular Islam more to the point. Since the masses could not understand the rigid, transcendental monotheism of Islam, and in their daily lives wanted to have an immediate awareness of their God, they began to approach him through the human mediumship of a dead or living saint. To this basic, simple human need may be attributed the rise and the phenomenal spread of the cult of saints and sanctuaries. In the South Asian subcontinent, these sanctuaries are called dargahs and are the scene of weekly, monthly, and in most cases, annual pilgrimages, the Urs. We are now in the courtyard of the sanctuary of the 18th century folk saint Shah Abdul Latif of Bhitsha. Bhitsha is a place quite close to Hyderabad in present-day Pakistan. His sanctuary is the focus of large congregations on every Thursday, in addition, of course, to the annual Urs. The preacher can be seen in action. To the large crowd that has gathered here, he is trying to tell the good deeds of the Saint Bhitai and his life story. Immediately behind him, there is a corridor, and you can see a young man kissing the threshold of the tomb chamber where the mortal remains of the dead saint lie in peace and tranquility. In this practice is very prevalent. In South India, this is another dargah where the attendant is presenting amulets to the devotees of the saint who lies buried here. Of course, we are talking here of popular Islam and customs that may be for some quite outrageous to the true spirit of Islam. This is the tomb of Bhitai itself, and this lute-like instrument, tambour, is in fact was the instrument which Shah Abdul Latif used in spreading his gospel of brotherhood.
Another famous Sufi saint from the Mughal period was Sheikh Salim Chishti, who prophesied the birth of a son for the Emperor Akbar. And today, numerous Muslims and Hindus come to his dargah, his tomb, to worship, crowding in to touch his tomb, as we see these women doing here, and to tie threads to the lattice work about the tomb, burning incense below, perhaps in the hope of gaining a son. All over India, one finds these tombs, this one beside a famous Hindu temple tank, this one along the roadside with flags to mark its borders, another in the back streets of a small town in central India, another beside a riverbank, or in the park of a North Indian city. and here even in the middle of the road outside the walls of a medieval Indian town. Some of these shrines illustrate the remarkable synthesis between Muslim and Hindu devotional practice, and we must remember again, as you have said, this distinction between classical Islam on the one hand and folk religion on the other, and this cultural diversity that is so remarkable in Islam. For example, one might go to a shrine in central India, as this one, the shrine of a Muslim pir, where Muslims are worshiping what looks very much like a Shiva linga under a canopy. And in fact, the attendant here will introduce himself as a pujari, using the term for the Hindu temple attendant.
Muslim festivals are quite something too. This structure we see is made of bamboo and paperwork, and this is to mourn the tragic episode of the martyrdom of Hussein during the month of Muharram. And these structures are called taziyah. They are displayed for the first 9 days outside the houses, and on the 10th taken out in procession. Now, people forming part of procession get so much involved in what they are doing that often they start bruising themselves and slashing their body with sharp knives. And often we see them carrying banners. This is, according to their own belief, was, for instance, the banner which Hussein himself held when he marched against the Umayyads.
Muhammad's birthday is also celebrated in the Muslim world, and here in Benares is the parade, carrying bright floats through the streets with colored lights strung everywhere for a very boisterous celebration.
Muslim architecture, like Muslim painting, is permeated with a sense of openness, serenity, and a sense of divine presence. Here we see a sequence of pictures of mosques. This calligraphy is in the Shah Jahan's mosque at a place called Thatta.
And here is the gate to the Taj Mahal, and we go in on the calligraphy here that is found on both sides and the top of this gate through which one passes to enter the gardens for the tomb itself.
And this is interesting. This is a small mosque called Hayat Mosque in Hyderabad, in a small street, where they have not used any glaze tile or colorful bricks, but just painting. And a modern mosque in Lahore commemorating the people who died in the 1965 war. Tomb of the poet-philosopher of Pakistan, Iqbal. And these are beautiful Shalimar gardens. We see the pool in the middle. And this pillared hall was added to the Lahore fort by Shah Jahan.
I want to thank you for your insights into Islamic institutions and doctrine and practice, into the Sufi orders and the folk religion and the religious symbolism, all of which have left deep imprints upon the faith and practice and history of South Asia.
Hey, Ned, what are you drinking, mate?